Welcome to episode 47 of the Breaking Balls podcast. I bet you thought you'd heard the last of us, but a long weekend out west, whether it was Adam's bachelor party out in Phoenix, Chase Elliott's snowboarding trip in Colorado, the Cup Series out in Vegas, a lot of chaos.
Yep, Bob, a lot of banged up dudes indeed, some of us worse than others. Bob, no 6-week hiatus for us, just a couple days to recover, but we're back, baby.
Flags in the air. Boogity, boogity, boogity. Ooh, let's go racing, boys.
Well, Bob, somehow, some way, we are here to podcast another day. I, honest to God, did not think we would make it to episode 47 of the Breaking Balls podcast for a lot of reasons. None were more apparent than the performance that our group of gentlemen put on at Wasted Grain in Scottsdale, Arizona, and various other bars. But, Bob, we made it somehow, some way. Here we are.
You know, Ad, we are a couple of days late. If you're a loyal fan of this podcast, you were probably wondering, where's my post-Sunday race? I need the ball boys. Where's my Breaking Balls? The boys were on IR for a few days. We needed some, R&R, I think is putting it generous, Ad. I'll be frank, I still worked the last few days. I don't think the company got their money's worth from me, off the record here, but we are battered, we are broken, we are breaking balls. We are still here, post Scottsdale. Ad, I'm so glad we survived the bachelor party. It was a hell of a weekend, though.
I have no idea how we survived, Bob, but we were not in podcasting shape. So much so, Bob, I don't even think I've really told you this story yet, but on the way home, getting through TSA, my brother often does not book his own travel. So he does not know that if you have TSA pre-check, it doesn't just magically happen. You have to actually put it on your ticket each time you fly. So we go to the TSA pre-check line. I'm good to go. My brother, however, does not have it on his ticket. So they're like, nope, you can't go through TSA pre-check. And I'm like, oh, gosh. So there's two lines available, Bob, right in front of me. One is a very clear path with no people. One is the line that I just waited in that has a bunch of people, a bunch of suitcases, a lot of things to avoid. So me, thinking that I am going to, path of least resistance, of course, go to the open one and just walk through. Bob, when I tell you that someone's grandmother yelled at me with such ferocity, "Sir, you cannot go there. You have to go back the way you came." And Bob, at this point, I was hungover, I was hurt, I was going through some sort of withdrawal. And this woman who worked for Clear, the private TSA thing that you pay money, I guess, and you skip the line, this lady was about to meet her maker because I just about forgot I was at an airport. And I turned around and I was like, "What the fuck did you say to me?" And I was, Bob, I was about a comment away from realizing it because the TSA dude was getting ready to stand up. And I was like, you know what? I'm not getting arrested by Paul Blart here. I am going to walk firmly through that line. And my brother, of course, was low-key kind of mortified, but kind of like, I would like to think my brother would have gotten arrested with me in the Phoenix airport, but it got pretty close and we were headed down that direction, Bob. But that's not even the craziest story of this weekend. Somehow, some way, we made it through the entire weekend.
I'm glad that
I almost got arrested on the way.
I'm glad you didn't get detained at. I'm glad you didn't get detained at Sky Harbor. That's a good start to the podcast here. Wow, I've got to say, everyone had at least some kind of travel, hiccup or woe this weekend. I got home on the whim of my teeth. No bones about it. At this podcast, we had debated about going to the Vegas race. So it was 50-50 on if we were going to go to that or not. So I didn't actually book my ticket from Phoenix to Nashville home. And so I was wondering if I was going to go to Vegas or not. So I'm not going to book that ticket. Whatever. There's still tickets left for Southwest if I go to Nashville when I, need it. Well, then it gets to, about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm sitting in Tempe, Arizona, outside of Phoenix. right outside the campus of Arizona State. I'm sitting at God's creation called Waffle House because somehow or another, God brought the South to the Southwest just a little bit. And God bless it, because it was smothered, it was covered, it was chunked, and it was sliced. And I booked my Southwest Airlines flight at 3 in the morning in that Tempe, Arizona, Scottsdale Waffle House. But I paid a pretty penny for it, over what I should have. So
Hey, hold on, Bob.
don't feel bad about your travel
Bob,
woe
just
this weekend.
really quickly, so we can give the listeners a little bit of a heads up. Over or under $500 on that flight, Bob?
Over. Well over $500. It was not a good weekend. I'm so broke. But I guess we can jump into a couple stories here, Ad, because listen, we're not going to out anyone on this podcast. If you're in the Bachelor Party group and you're listening, congratulations, first of all. We've swung you onto the podcast. That's another listener in our cap. I'm beginning to think this was just a really expensive advertising trip for the podcast, partially, Ad. But couple of stories I think that jump out here. The one that obviously comes out to mind here, I mentioned that I went to Waffle House. Well, naturally, if you're a fan of this podcast, you know that me and my co-host have a lovely bond with this lovely creation. I actually took him to his first Waffle House back in Tennessee. Well, naturally, you'd think if I'm going to Waffle House, my partner in crime, Mr. Adam O'Shea, is going to be going with me. But no. He did not. And Adam, I feel like we just kind of paid each other, it evened out this weekend, because I didn't go to Whataburger, you didn't go to Waffle House. We both just had one night apiece where I guess just we weren't him.
We were certainly not him. I looked like a defeated pizza chef, back up on the bed, just like I got hit by the late night rush. I was Mamma Mia. There was nothing. There was no reviving me. There was no ravioli giving me the formioli. I was not going to wake up. It was sad. But Bob, I had every intention when we called that Uber to get in and go to that Waffle House. But the second that I decided to lay down on that bed, it was all over. Everything caught up to me. It was an absolute mess. But Bob, I will say this much. Another fun Phoenix story. The Uber driver who picked us up from the Waffle House. By the way, if you think Waffle House is better than In-N-Out, your taste buds are trash. Carl's Jr. is better than Whataburger. That's the new take. Whataburger's trash. Carl's Jr. is better than Whataburger. That's Hardee's for all you East Coasters. It's better than Whataburger. That's all I'm going to say. Except for the honey butter chicken biscuit. That is something to write home to mom about. That's on God. That's beautiful. However, burger-wise, no. But Bob,
I wish I could have been there with you to show you how to order Whataburger. That's on me. I let you down the first night. You let me down the second.
Why don't you tell the people how you got home that night when I was at Whataburger? I think that's one of the better stories that came of this weekend, and it's yours to tell, my friend.
Ad, first night in Scottsdale, or I guess first night going out in Scottsdale. It was a marathon day. The boys started pretty early. I'd say about 9:30, 10 o'clock was first crack of the beer. And so, this is about 1, 2 a.m. downtown Scottsdale. A couple of bottle services, I'd say, for the boys. We were feeling good. And then we hit a wall like we were the man on Adam's shirt. If you see our Instagram, Mr. Intimidator. We hit a wall and we were just done for the count. So tried to go home, tried to order the Uber. Phone didn't have any service downtown. So I looked at Adam and said, I need an Uber. Can you help me out?
What
a bro gives me his phone.
Jump in really quickly here, because Bob's not doing this as much justice as he should. Bob says he hit a wall. And when I mean hit a wall, it was a hard right turn into this wall. And there was not a lot of movement coming from the driver's seat, because Bob had hit the point to where he was not even poor guy barely able to walk. He was just ready to go. This wall was not as gentle as he made it seem. He was ready to go. Okay, continue.
I had learned how to samba earlier. I was feeling good, and then all of a sudden my body just lost all energy. It was a tough night. So Adam gives me his phone as a great friend, says, here, I'm going with my brother and my friends to Whataburger. Take my phone, Uber home. Here's my passcode. We're going to keep it unlocked for you. Get home. I trust you as a good friend. I wouldn't trust Adam with my unlocked phone. That's just neither here nor there. I get in the Uber. I'm sitting there. I'm halfway home, and all of a sudden I can't get in to check how far I'm at in the Uber, and I can't get into Adam's phone because I don't know the passcode. So I pull out my phone and I text Adam, "What's your passcode?" Didn't register until I guess Adam got back home and checked his phone. That I texted myself virtually, "What's your
So
passcode?"
I will say,
Just
incredibly
tough luck
respectful
there.
because Bob did do exactly what he may have hit a wall, but he was incredibly respectful because he grabbed my phone and he said, "I will put it on your bed as soon as I get home." So I said, "All right, well, as soon as I get back from Whataburger, go into the room." Lo and behold, right there on my pillow is my iPhone. I check it and I have a text from Bob. I was like, why would he have sent me a text message? And it was then when I realized that my friend had made a grave, grave miscalculation. And Bob, that was receiving that text was a high point for me of the weekend. So it may have been a mistake on your part, but I loved every second of it.
Just kind of summed up my 2:30 experience in Scottsdale.
I
But
mean,
we could give a lot of really bad stories here. We're going to save our viewers and our friends that embarrassment ourselves partially. But we had a rough weekend out west. We missed a lot as far as what we cover at this podcast, and I think that we've got to start with the biggest news because I was sitting there with you when this news broke on Friday afternoon that another man out west had a rough weekend. Chase Elliott, NASCAR's most popular driver, champion of the sport, obviously, as you would call it, one of the straws that stirs the drink in NASCAR. I mean, it sounds just kind of like an ad lib, but breaks his leg or breaks his tibia, I believe, snowboarding out in Colorado right before the day before qualifying. I mean, just wild to hear. I mean, he's going to be out, they said, at least 6 weeks. We'll get into that stuff later, but just that initial shock of the news had, I mean, just kind of sounds unreal, doesn't it?
It's one of those things that, I mean, the first thing that I thought of was, why the hell is Chase Elliott snowboarding in the middle of racing season? Doesn't seem to make a ton of sense, especially when you're the sport's most popular driver. It seems like there should be something in the contract somewhere that would limit this sort of thing. But ultimately, it happened. All credit to Josh Berry for kind of stepping in on short notice at Vegas. But I mean, I think initially, Bob, there's just more questions than answers.
Hendersonville's own Josh Berry, just for the record. Now this podcast has officially a rooting interest with a hometown man in the Cup Series. Love to see that. I just had to chime in there for a second. Carry on.
Stand up. But yeah, no, Josh Berry did an all right job. Not sure what the expectation is for the Cup team moving forward, but it just feels like you're trying to do the impossible. You've got to fill the seat of the straw that stirs the drink. Since you stole it from me already, Bob. I just think, losing your sport's most popular driver, this isn't good for Hendrick, and it's almost worse for the sport of NASCAR. Feels like you got to do more to protect somebody like this from himself. I know you need activities in your free time to kind of take your mind off of things. I will never combat that, but maybe, just maybe, stay off of a snowboard when you've got a race that weekend. But what do you think about it, Bob?
Yeah, I definitely agree. You're going to lose some eyes for Chase Elliott being out. It's just kind of the factor when the most popular driver goes out. You're going to lose some of those people, whether it's from the siren going off in Dawsonville or, a couple of fans that, just grew up watching the Elliots together, and that's kind of their rooting interest. Is if the 9 car is not out there and, an Elliott's not on the track, they're not going to watch it. Kind of crazy for us to think about it, but there are people actually that think that. It's kind of wild, but you're going to see, I definitely think a couple of viewer ticks down. I think the next few weeks, it's going to be interesting to see how much of that impact is Chase Elliott and, how much of that is just, TV viewing as a whole. I mean, you saw motorsports as a general was down this week. IndyCar, F1, NASCAR, all were down, but that's here nor there. It's going to be interesting to see how they, handle just that big of a gap. I mean, it's not like it's one off here and there. It's 6-7 weeks at least. That's a notable gap.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, Bob. You may or may not know this, but I've got a cousin in Dawsonville who, believe it or not, they are going to have some sort of drive for tibias or fibias in the county in the city for the entire week. They're accepting donations, maybe to hopefully have Chase recover a little bit quicker. I'm also hearing that they decided that they will be removing all of the Napa 9 balls out of the pool hall there in Dawsonville in order to show a great deal of respect for Chase Elliott, because at this point their hero has fallen. He cannot stand on his own 2 feet, and the town of Dawsonville is there to pick him up, Bob.
Just for the record, if anyone from Dawsonville is listening, I can't believe you've made it this far. We've trashed the city enough. We are very, very much not on the radar, I think, in that city for this
They're not quite
podcast.
getting the Waco treatment, though. I mean, let's be realistic. I mean, let's face facts. If we're going to have podcast cities that we dislike on this podcast is 1, anywhere where Chris Williams works, 2, Waco, 3, I guess we got to throw Dawsonville. We've probably trashed Dawsonville about that amount.
David Elliott Koresh, please stand up. I would love to see how this goes. I will mention, though, Ad, just because you touched on it, the snowboard, and I obviously that's going to be a little bit more of a risky sport there. These drivers do have to have some kind of, way to get out and, have, their lives and enjoy it, whether it's him biking, whether it's him snowboarding. It was probably just a freak accident. We don't really know how it happened. It hasn't been announced. Obviously, yeah, you would like him to have a little bit more awareness the day before qualifying snowboarding, but, if this happened Monday, if it happened, a week before Daytona, it still was going to happen. There's guys that play basketball, that golf, they could tear their ACL tomorrow doing that. At the end of the day, guys are going to get hurt one way or another. That's just kind of the freak part of the sport. And, I'm glad he's okay. It could have been a lot worse. I mean, we've seen, obviously, those, skiing and snowboarding injuries end up really bad, especially in motorsports. But yeah, I don't have a problem with it, to be quite honest. It's kind of like the sprint car thing where they're honing their racecraft, but it's really dangerous. You can't monitor these guys 24/7, and you just they hope that they're just putting themselves in the best position.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at least the argument that I would come back with there, Bob, is that at least the sprint car stuff, yeah, it's dangerous. Don't get me wrong, but at least it's a transferable skill. It's not quite iRacing to where, there's that type of thing, but you're still getting the time in the wheel. You're still feeling, the tires spin on dirt, which, and obviously being behind the wheel of any race car is incredibly helpful. But yeah, I just, the more you think about this, it's just kind of like, I don't know. As far as Chase Elliott goes, Bob, I mean, if you were going to pick one of Chase Elliott's hobbies for him to get injured, I'm really glad it was snowboarding and not flying, because otherwise we'd have had a real John Denver situation. I've already lost one of my heroes in a plane accident, and I can't have Chase Elliott going down like that, because at that point, I don't think NASCAR is quite ready to replace him, just like we were never quite ready to replace John Denver. So anyway, Bob, let's, I don't know, thank God I'm a country boy and move on.
Yeah, let's get out of this before it gets way too morbid. Obviously we did miss a little bit here. We won't touch on it too much, Ad, because we're pro Chase Elliott and we're not going to watch the race. No, I'm just kidding. There was a Vegas race this weekend. I'm sure Chase Elliott would have loved to have been a part of it, because the Hendrick stable, outside of Josh Berry, who was just kind of getting his bearings in that 9 car, really dominated the race. I mean, 1, 2, 3, pretty much the entire way you looked at it. William Byron wins stage 1, wins stage 2, and then even with the late pit cycle, comes out and was the class of the field all day, ends up winning all 3 stages in the race, locks himself into the playoffs. Winner number 3 already this year, playoff spot number 3 already locked up in theory. Add the Chevrolets are rolling, Hendrick and the big boys look like they're just kind of, figuring it out, it looks like, the last few weeks. Did I miss anything from Vegas? I mean, what do we need to kind of focus here on, just to kind of touch with?
Like you said, the late green flag pit cycle and the caution there kind of made things a little bit interesting, at least for the Toyotas there. It looked like they were maybe going to flip the script of last year's race. Obviously, with the Chevys kind of stealing from the Toyotas, who dominated all last year, like we talked about in that race. Instead, Chevy was able to hold on. The cars were just that much better. Very interesting. Just kind of seems like the more things change in the sport, the more things stay the same. To see Hendrick finish 1, 2, 3 feels oh so familiar. At Las Vegas, maybe not as familiar, but it just goes to show you, Bob, even though with all of these limits that we're running and the different restrictions that are put on these teams, ultimately guys are going to find an advantage. And I'm interested to see moving forward if Chevy's found one, because that 1, 2, 3 finish was dominant from Hendrick.
Dominant for Hendrick, and Chevy's obviously won the first 3 races of the season now. Toyota definitely had some speed. They were definitely hanging around. You saw Martin Truex Jr., you saw Denny Hamlin, even Bubba Wallace at times was up there in the talk for the top 6, 7. There was at times where even at the end where Truex went for it, Denny Hamlin went for the late pit strategy, stayed out, tried to kind of beat the cars and have that track position, and just at the end of the day the Hendrick stable with fresh tires and raw speed, let's call it what it is, just kind of swallowed them up. And Denny Hamlin didn't even finish in the top 10. So the result may not have been there for Toyota, but if you watch the race personally, I feel like they're not as far of a gap. I will mention though, you didn't really see Ford too much. Joey Logano was on the pole. You thought, okay, he won the race in the fall. Here we go. Probably going to keep it up here, and then off a cliff we go with Ford.
Here's the thing, Bob. SHR, all you got to do is look at how those cars finished. Outside of Harvick, you never even saw any.
Nope. We're not calling it SHR anymore. It's SHH. It's Stewart Haas Harvick. And he deserves ownership.
At this point, dude, he's single-handedly carrying that team. And it's not even close. You didn't even see any of the other cars. Chase Briscoe was non-existent in that race. Aric Almirola, don't get me started. But if it wasn't for Kevin Harvick, it just goes to show you that this team is in trouble. Not necessarily sure what they're going to do to fill that gap, but it was no more apparent for me than this weekend watching the race, as hungover as I was and as banged up as I was not in bad a shape as SHR is going to be when Harvick ends up leaving this team, Bob, because it is not going to be pretty.
You look at the rest of that team, Chase Briscoe has just, I don't know if it's him, if it's the car. They were obviously so far off to start at California. They got it somewhat right to finish in the top 25, but you look at Ryan Preece, they've struggled on the ovals to start. Aric Almirola, just kind of hit or miss. Maybe it's just kind of the West Coast swing and we're overreacting with Ford and especially SHR, but Kevin Harvick is genuinely carrying the team to start the season, and a good run at Phoenix here for anyone in the Ford camp, but especially in the SHR camp. A Ryan Preece top 5 or a top 10, that would go so far to start the season, just to show that, hey, we're not that far off compared to the Chevrolets, because right now it feels like the Fords are climbing an uphill battle. And we started the season on this preview saying, oh, this is the Ford's year. They finally figured it out. Maybe we were wrong. I don't know. Maybe we're just overreacting.
We could be overreacting, but at this point, we could even look outside of SHR and look into Penske. And Ryan Blaney's even kind of been a little bit of the talk, a lot of talk around Ryan Blaney. Obviously Kyle Petty had his comments.
Oh yeah.
You want to get into that now, Bob?
We might as well jump into it. Yeah, Ryan Blaney's definitely been getting a lot of the publicity here the last few days, thanks to old Kyle Petty. If you saw his comments on one of the podcasts, I got to go back and check out who it was. Goodness gracious,
Sirius Radio or something. But they ended up asking him about Ryan Blaney and kind of what's going on with the camp and how he'll be remembered if this continues. And for some odd reason, Kyle Petty just decided to throw the ricochet of all ricochets at Casey Kane of all people, because for some reason that felt necessary. And obviously taking shots at Casey Kane, said, kind of a little bit of a disappointment in his NASCAR career. Obviously Casey Kane following it up with that full trophy case that he has in his house, saying disappointing in what way? Bob, what's your take on this? Obviously, Kyle Petty, he's got the right to say whatever he wants. He has his opinion, but it just felt a little unnecessary to me to throw Casey Kane's name into this conversation for whatever reason.
Yeah, I agree and I disagree with what you say, because, at the end of the day, Kyle Petty is an analyst. He's there to give an opinion, and, we're talking about it. It made waves across the entire industry. So at the end of the day, he's doing his job. And Ryan Blaney is underperforming. Let's call it what it is. In that, equipment he's had, whether it was the Wood Brothers or the Penske, seat he's had in the last 7 years, I believe 9 wins in his career. If I checked right, I got to double check on that. I think it's 9 wins. He has underperformed. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. Now, where I will agree with you, Ad, was throwing Casey Kane under the bus there. I mean, every guy's got his different circumstances in his career. And yeah, Casey Kane at times had a great seat and underperformed, but there was times where he was in the Hendrick seat where the Hendrick car was not, Hendrick Motorsports. And, Casey Kane had injury problems, and, that guy is still a great wheelman, one of the best drivers of his generation, when he's fully healthy. It felt like kind of a ricochet shot. It is what it is on there. It was just kind of a comparison. If anything, you could compare him to Kyle Petty, but, I probably wouldn't have played as well. But, I think even Kyle would say, I didn't live up to my career at the end of the day with my last name. It just, I'm cool with him saying it, Ad. It just, I'm with you. The Casey Kane ricochet shot.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Is it's just like, if you're Kyle Petty, look in the mirror, buddy. I mean, yes, have your take on Ryan Blaney and say he's underperforming, because yes, you're right. That's true right now. But the only person that should come to your mind when you think about somebody underperforming in NASCAR is you. I mean, if you're Kyle Petty, it just didn't make sense to throw Casey Kane into it, especially because Casey Kane is, against all doctors' orders and everybody's best wishes, is still racing for some god-honest reason we don't necessarily know. But, I mean,
love of the game.
I mean, it's just one of those things you can't quit. But, yeah, it just felt unnecessary, kind of disrespectful. But at the end of the day, you're right, Bobby's got to move the needle. And just in the same way he has the right to spew the take, I have the right to say that it's an awful take and just sit there and hammer him for it. And that's what I'm going to do, because I think it's awful. I think it was dumb to bring up Casey Kane. I think we got to give Ryan Blaney a little bit more time here. It doesn't seem like such a Ryan Blaney issue. It seems as if more of the Fords in general are having an issue. But if this continues throughout the year, Bob, if you're a good driver, you should be able to get a win regardless of the equipment. And Blaney's got to get a win this year in order to solidify himself as one of those top-tier drivers, at least in my opinion.
Nope, 100% agreed. We've kind of talked about Blaney. He had the 3-win season in 2021, and he thought, okay, here we go. 2022 is where Ryan Blaney takes the next step. And he did in some steps where, the consistency was there. When you look at the points overall from last season, top 3, I believe. I think he could
consistently put up consistently put up good finishes. I mean, I believe if he would have won a race,
the fact he pointed himself into the playoffs,
I believe if he would have won a race,
is all you need to say.
He would have ended up having the most points. I don't know if that's true. Honestly, at this point, if you're not fact checking us, you should be, because half of what we're saying on here is just malarkey. But at the end of the day, I mean, Bob, he had a successful year last year. He may not have won, but he was finishing high.
That's the thing. He had a great run, and a couple little changes here or there in the late rounds. He could have been looking at a Phoenix run, and ultimately being in the Final Four even without a win, which sounds ludicrous when there was 17 regular season winners and ultimately 19. But Ryan Blaney was still one of the fastest cars in the field all year. He just couldn't win when it mattered. He couldn't be the guy at the checkered flag, except for the All-Star race in Texas, where he still put his window net down too early and nearly lost that. But that's a whole nother story. He's got to find victory lane this year. I know it's easier said than done, but just for critics like Kyle Petty who have a point, they've got to shut up, and he's got to pressure out that noise by winning. Otherwise, it's going to be following his whole career.
At the end of the day, there's an old quote. If you've ever played sports, you've heard it. Winning fixes everything. And Ryan Blaney just needs a win. It fixes absolutely everything. Puts a big old Band-Aid on what we've got going on. But, Bob, speaking of putting a Band-Aid on it, anything else we need to touch on from Vegas before we move on to Phoenix, which, quite honestly, saying that kind of made my liver quiver a little bit, headed back to Phoenix? I mean, I don't know, man. Yeesh.
I sounds haunting just going back, but I don't think they're going to be throwing the beer dye as much out at the track out in a good year. So fingers crossed on that. Hopefully they won't be playing as much baseball. And yeah, we might as well jump into it, Ad, because it's a big weekend out there. Obviously this is the championship track out. We'll be back there in November. Everyone's kind of getting this is the third look at the track with the next gen car. Very curious to if we're going to get the same as last spring, where Chase Briscoe comes out and kind of surprises everyone. I know if that's SHR's script, they're going to be very happy that they sat through 2 weeks of absolute garbage for this. But um, I mean, man, there's a lot of pressure, it feels like, on the Fords to perform this weekend. And I know Kevin Harvick's really good at Phoenix. There's some guys that are really good here. Um, but that's at least one thing that I really want to watch going in, because obviously they've won the last 2 races. They swept the Phoenix races in the next gen car. If there's ever a time to win it now, it's
Yeah,
right
I
now.
mean, at the end of the day, if you're Ford, I think you have to lean on Joey Logano here a little bit. Obviously, he had all the time in the world to set up that car perfectly in the championship race, and he ended up winning last year. Obviously, the races are a little bit different because of the weather, maybe a little bit cooler out in Arizona this week. Haven't really checked the forecast, but this is a place where they have good data. They have data to use on this car. And if you were going to see Ford be successful, this is a track that they won as a manufacturer at both times. So as far as getting momentum right, this is exactly where they would like to be. But then again, Bob, it's Phoenix. So we kind of comes into the picture. As always, it's Death Taxes Denny Hamlin, someone we always have to keep an eye out any single time we come to Phoenix, because he's just proven it so many different times. Maybe not in this next gen car, but in all sorts of different generations of cars of the past. Denny Hamlin's always a guy you got to look out for here. But what do you think, Bob? Who you got your eye on this weekend?
Yeah, I'm very curious to see, and I know it's kind of boring here, but Hendrick generally is a very good Phoenix package for them. It works out, that kind of short intermediate track package. Obviously, they are dialed in when it matters in the championship race. They've won, I believe, 2 of the last 3 fall races there. Off the top of my head, I'd have to go double check on the spring stats there, but I mean, this is kind of a track that suits the Hendrick team. And the last 2 weeks, if you watch Kyle Larson's lap times the last stage at California, he was dialed in. A late caution probably would have had him winning last week before William Byron. Obviously, Josh Berry's going to be in that 9 car again this week, and he's a short track racer. So, another week in that 9 car, it's going to have experience. Sure, he's going to be a little bit faster. I think that the Hendrick stable is going to be the one to watch. But more than anything, I'm just curious to see if that Chevy dominance keeps up bad, because we've harped on it all along. But this is really unprecedented that the manufacturers won 3, maybe 4 in a row. It hasn't happened in years.
It's the exact type of domination that we thought we were going to avoid with the next gen car. We thought we were going to see more parity, but for whatever reason, it seems as if Chevy has found something. I'm very curious to see if it continues this week. Because if it continues and we've got 4 straight Chevys, I can only imagine the takes that we're going to get in the weeks coming about, oh, we got to do something to fix this, What did they do to research the front end? Because that's the only thing that's different. I mean, put your tinfoil hats on, Bob, because if Chevy wins 4 of the first 4 races here, it is going to go silly season.
It's going to be, how did Rick Hendrick pay off? This is the whole Garage 56 hole paranoia all over again. Here we go. NASCAR's in cahoots with them all. If Chevy's really that dominant, why is Legacy Motor Club not dominating like they were to start last year? I'm very curious to see all the different puzzles in this piece here. It's very fascinating to see. I'm curious. I've got a pick on my mind. I'm curious though. Obviously, it was your bachelor party last weekend, so I'm giving you the floor, and you get first pick.
Well,
this
Bob,
week.
I think it's as simple as this. I don't think NASCAR is going to let Chevy win a 4th race here, just for the reasons that we talked about it. I like Denny Hamlin. I think Denny Hamlin's my guy. I think the Toyotas were the only ones that showed remnants of speed at Vegas. So it feels like if you're going to pick a manufacturer right now, other than Chevy, it's got to be Toyota. So I am going to stick in there, and I'm going to go with Denny Hamlin.
I would love to pick a Hendrick Chevrolet, because I think that's probably the way it's going to end up. But, sometimes the narrative always ends up winning. And we've talked about him way too much this week to get the monkey off his back. I would love to have a live view on Kyle Petty when it happens. I think Ryan Blaney actually wins this race. I think he's just going to kind of shut everyone up, go into this race kind of pissed off and drive through the field, to be quite honest. Not drive around, drive through the field. I would love to see a pissed off Ryan Blaney kind of shut up the noise. It would be very interesting.
I'm here with you, Bob. It's not. I don't think it's Ryan Blaney. I think it's that car that we got to ask: is he going to have the car to be able to drive pissed off all the way through this field? Because I mean, if he doesn't have the machine under him, he ain't going to be able to do anything. He's a great driver, but we will see. So
I am here for a heel Ryan Blaney. Can you imagine that? A heel turn for Ryan Blaney. Everyone loves YRB, and all of a sudden he goes villain mode. I'm here
Bob,
for
we
it.
may as well say it because we forgot to mention it early, but there's one quick little story that came out just before we started recording, I think earlier today, but Project 91 is back. Different track, same man, Kimi Räikkönen. Welcome back to NASCAR, Iceman. We are happy to have you. I am so glad to see that this wasn't a one-off. He will be racing at COTA in NASCAR. Bob, other than pure excitement, what does this make you feel? Are you happy that he's coming back? Just tell me what's on your mind here.
Yeah, it's exciting to see he's coming back. They said that seat is his until he does not want it in that road course package for Trackhouse's Project 91. And he said he had fun at Watkins Glen last year, and before getting taken out of a wreck by Ross Chastain and Austin Dillon in the roundabout and the bus stop chicane. He had a competitive car. He was running top 15 lap time, so he knows COTA well. He's raced there. He's won there before in an F1 car, so. Anytime you can get another experience, I think he's going to be even better. And, it would be great for the sport if he could, wheel out a top 10 somehow. And, it would be notable for the sport. It would be great. And just, I think it would be fun for Kimi, too. I think the drivers love it. I think the media loves it. And the fans love it.
I think it's just one of those things. It moves the needle every time it gets announced. I mean, that Project 91 is just so exciting for the sport. And to have Kimi Räikkönen there until further notice, I mean, it's exciting because, like you said, it's COTA. It's a place he's won before. And not to mention, he got so comfortable in that car by the end of the weekend at Watkins Glen that I hope he can just knock the rust off in practice. And I think he's got a chance of being really competitive. I mean, there's no I mean, let's face facts. Trackhouse, other than Hendrick, has had the most speed as far as the Chevys have gone. And if they could give Kimi Räikkönen a car that could get him into top 10 potential, I think he's the driver to do it. And it would be remarkable to see. And I would love to see the odds on that bet because I would not like to bet against Kimi Räikkönen at COTA, Bob.
Can you imagine if he won? It would be a wild sight. It almost would be bad for NASCAR too, just to say he came in and wheeled it. But it's fun. He's having fun, and like I said, the drivers love having him around. So I think a rising tide lifts all ships as far as motorsports is concerned, even sometimes when we want to make that rivalry. But anytime that, like Sunday, when you had the F1 start, IndyCar at midday, and then NASCAR to lead in, as motorsports fans, you can't get much more spoiled than that when they all blend together.
Not to mention about the crossover. I mean, we already heard the other announcement that was big was Kyle Larson's going to be racing 2 years at the Indy 500. Obviously, that was kind of what we figured would happen, but I mean, it's cool to see all the crossover. Motorsports seems healthier this way, and if we can kind of cross-pollinate between the three, between F1, IndyCar, and NASCAR, I think we've got a healthy ecosystem here, Bob.
Well, Ad, we are back at Breaking Balls. Hopefully, we will be back Sunday night for more. I am off to Dallas this weekend because God hates my wallet, and March is just eating me dry, and I wish I could say I'm going to be in Nashville for the SEC tournament because the Missouri Tigers are going to be marching into Nashville and knocking off the Tennessee Volunteers Friday afternoon. You've heard it here first. I can't wait to manifest that in. And maybe Dennis and the boys make a run in Nashville. I got to be on the record here. I booked my flight early enough on Sunday morning to where I can be back for the championship final if they make it. So I'm just holding out a little hope here. I'm manifesting something,
Ladies and
buddy.
gentlemen, Road Dogg Bob Perry proves once again that in the Southeastern Conference, it just means more. And Bob, I pray that your Missouri Tigers do not disappoint you and you take that early flight home and you get to watch them play live in Nashville as God intended. Any thoughts wrapping things up before we get the heck out of here and call it a podcast?
Nope. I hope you have a quieter weekend, Dad. Maybe have a detox or two. Maybe go a little less heavy. But if not, hey, I respect it either way. And if you're a new listener to this podcast, or if somehow you've come back to us, thank you. We're happy to have you back, and hopefully we can bring some more shenanigans to your life down the line.
ruthless shenanigans is kind of what we do here at Breaking Balls. So, well, if you're listening to this, it means you found us somewhere. So we ask that you keep finding us wherever the heck you're listening to us, YouTube, Spotify. Please be a friend, tell a friend, and gosh darn it, Breaking Balls forever.